Hey, what's up? It's Comic95 the Savior, and for this video I will be talking about 13 things that I have kind of changed my perspective or learned from being in Japan. Keep in mind that this is my own personal experience, my own opinion. Everyone will have different thoughts and feelings on this, and I won't spend a long time talking about each one. So yeah, kind of just read between the lines and figure out what I'm saying. I could go on and literally make an individual video for each of these 13 points. So yeah, let's get started. Number 1. I'm American. So I know this sounds really stupid, but as a black woman living in America, I mean, I know that my nationality is American, but you never, at least in my opinion, I never really felt American per se, because I am a minority, I am black, and we're constantly referred to as African American or Black Americans. But being in Japan, the African American hyphenated word is kind of non-existent here. It sounds really weird to say, so you just refer to yourself as being American, and when you explain to people that you're African American, it comes off as kind of weird. Like, you don't even call yourself black, like Caucasian and things like that. So I know that it can sound wrong and selloutish to some people, but it's not supposed to be a way of getting rid of your identity, but rather saying that, you know, we're all one, and this isn't, you know, a them and us type thing, if that makes sense. And I kind of got this both from a mixture of Japanese and European people that, you know, that I befriended, and when I talk to them, they're like, you know, why do Americans, you know, separate, you know, black and white? We know as black Americans why. But again, it was kind of an eye-opening thing, because I honestly never really thought about it much. And again, I know we have reasons why we do this, but you get what I'm saying. Like I said, I can make a whole video on this topic. So that was something that I thought was kind of good, eye-opening. It changed my perspective. Number 2, group thinking isn't that bad, and individuality isn't everything. So as an American, we're pretty much taught that you are supposed to do whatever is best for you, what you like, what interests you. Everything is me, 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 me. You know, what's going to help me, what's going to help my family, what's going to help my life. Everything is all about yourself. Whereas in Japan, while I do believe there's some give and take that does need to happen, their system isn't perfect, but it definitely opened my eyes and gave me a different perspective that maybe everything doesn't always have to be, you know, just about you. Maybe you should consider what benefits the country, what benefits, you know, the bigger picture, the group. Now, of course, I can play devil's advocate and think of how this is also a bad thing for Japan, because similarly to America, the group thinking also has its, you know, negative sides to it as well. But I think in a lot of aspects, it's also a really good thing. I think it would be nice if both countries can kind of like mix both ideas and have more balance, instead of it just being, you can't have an opinion, you can't, you know, be an individual, like how Japan is, and America being where don't worry about everyone else, just think about yourself. So it's a, you know, two extremes. You have the selfish side of being an individual and the selfless side of, you know, group thinking. But again, I can make a video talking about the pros and cons for each, keeping it short and simple here. Number 3, you don't always have to have an opinion. This was probably the most shocking one for me, because as an American, we're pretty much taught that you're an idiot if you don't have good, you know, debate skills and strategy. Anytime somebody disagrees with you, you are taught that you have to defend, you know, your stance, and you have to explain yourself, and you have to have thoughts and opinions on everything. Talk about politics. That is literally a prime example. You have people that don't know anything about politics, but suddenly become experts because they disagree with something, which that's fine. You have the right to disagree. You don't have to know everything, but you also don't have to speak on things that you don't fully understand and don't know. And in Japan, you're not seen as foolish for not having an opinion, but rather you're seen as foolish for being too opinionated and having thoughts on everything and always having and wanting to share them. So that was definitely a very eye-opening and, you know, mind-changing, you know, life experience that I had being here. Having to learn kind of to be a little more reserved and not be so opinionated. And just to let you know, I'm not really an opinionated person. This is my YouTube channel, but in real life, I normally don't say too much about what my thoughts or feelings are on something. So it's really interesting seeing an entire country that pretty much runs that way. Again, there's pros and cons to this. I can make an entire video about the negatives, but I'm talking about how, you know, there's some positive too and how it's changed my perspective. Number 4, Chinese people are actually really, really nice, and arguably some of the nicest people that I've ever met. Now, I know this sounds really bad in itself, and again, I can make a whole video on this topic, but as a Black American in particular, Asians and Blacks do not have the best relationship in the US, and even as far as things go with Asians and whites, as a black person, and especially a black woman in the black community, we normally associate Chinese people with being the rude workers at, the nail salon, or the rude people at the Chinese see-through kitchen, and, the staff members following you around in the beauty supply store. And not to say that those things are discredited, but rather to say that they do not represent everyone. And so while it sounds racist to have that mindset, if that's all you've ever experienced, all you've ever seen was dealing with people who their behavior is basically them being racist towards you, assuming that because you are black, that you are going to steal from them, that you are going to shoot up their place or rob them, etc., that's racist in itself. So naturally, my reaction is, I don't really like you either. Like, I'm just here because you're the only option that I have to get the hair supplies that I need for cheap, basically. But being here in Japan, I have had nothing but great experiences with really Asians of every country, really, but in particular people from China, people from Hong Kong, people from Taiwan, etc. So it's not just Chinese people, but I particularly think about Chinese people. My best friend here in Japan is actually a Chinese girl that I met my very first day here when I was in Tokyo as a college student. So that was really eye-opening for me, because in my mind, I had no intention of befriending somebody that was Chinese. I figured that, my goal is to stay away from you. I don't want you to think that I'm trying to steal from you. I'm not touching your shampoo. I didn't eat your food. I didn't touch your dishes. Like, I don't want no confusion. I'm the only black person in this house, was my mindset. But they were the ones that, quickly walked up to me, wanted to befriend me, wanted to talk to me. And it was genuine. It wasn't because, they like black culture or they like black people, but just super nice, super friendly, easy to get along with, easy to talk to people. So I'm really glad that I had that experience. It really taught me that, not everyone's racist and hates black people, basically. They don't all think that way. Number 5, similar to number 4, not all Europeans are racist either. Now this one's more interesting. Of course, as I think I said in another video, or if not earlier in this one, I'm not stupid. I'm aware that you can never put any entire race or anything into one category. There's always exceptions to the rule, but let's be real. Spending so much time on the internet, watching the media, etc., as a black person, you always have to have your guard up, and you normally don't expect white people in particular to be very fond of you, especially if they have limited, experience being around black people. At least with Americans, we are a multiracial country, even although it is, by far mostly white or white passing people, with black people being a very small portion. I didn't see myself as trying to befriend other foreigners because in my mind, again, I figured they were racist, wanted nothing to do with me. My first foreign friend was actually, a white girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, pale skin girl. I'm from Denmark. And I told her, shortly after we met, maybe a week into our friendship, that I actually was afraid to talk to her because I thought she didn't like me. We were living in Sakura House together, which is a dormitory in Shibuya, and every time, we would pass each other, she would kind of, just stare at me. And, when we'd be in the kitchen together, she would kind of be doing her own thing, and she didn't speak to me, and I didn't speak to her. It was just really awkward. And then one day, she was just like, hey, what are you doing today? You want to go out for dinner? And we just became friends and hit it off from there. Actually, made a little short YouTube video with her on my channel. I don't know if I deleted it. Might have. But anyway, that was really an eye-opening experience for me. And she's not the only person. I'm more impressed by the men that I've met here that are not prejudiced. I cannot tell you how many times I have white guys hitting on me, people that are, French and Italian and German, etc. So again, this is not to cancel racism, but rather to say, to say it's not a problem, but rather to say that everyone doesn't think that way. Everyone's not like that. And a lot of people here are completely open to be friends with and are dating you as a black person. So that definitely made me feel really good about the world, about myself. It made me a lot happier. We see a lot of negative, racist, and crazy people here in my comment section, on YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, but I promise you the majority of people here are not crazy, super conservative, racist white guys. It's mostly people that are, in between, liberal, or whatever their political party is. They're sane and normal. And I'll be fair, being conservative does not make you a racist. I worked with a conservative, hardcore Trump supporter that wasn't racist at all and actually called herself liking me, ironically. So it happens. Number 6, crime is not normal at all. So to quickly say these things before I forget, I'm talking about things like having to hide your valuables, clutch your bag, lock your doors, fear of going outside at night, fear of being raped, molested, etc. All of that crazy stuff, that's not normal. People not returning things, when they know it's not theirs. And again, this is not to say that crime does not exist in Japan. People do get robbed, people do get raped, molested. Bad things do happen here, do not get me wrong. But my point is that it doesn't happen very often. So when it does, happen, it's a big deal is made out of it. And yeah, this is also kind of a bit of culture shock for me, but just realizing that, you can live in a society where people do mostly follow rules and where people aren't evil and don't want to, steal from people and don't want to harm people. The thought of leaving my door unlocked or going exercising, late at night in an area where there's, no people or hardly anyone, or even an area that's really busy. Like, you never do that as a woman by yourself, especially not as a black woman. Nobody's going to come looking for you. So yeah, and then especially, my situation, living alone and being a young adult, that's normally something very scary. I wouldn't dream of, going outside for a walk or, run or whatever by myself late at night in Chicago unless I had a death wish. And I was stupid and I did this during my time that I stayed in New York. But I would not recommend, doing that in any major city. It's very dangerous. So leaving doors unlocked. I do personally lock my door now, but knowing that I don't have to do these things. I don't have to always be in fear of somebody taking my stuff. When I go to a restaurant, it's normal to put your bag or leave your computer or your phone at the table, so that people know, hey, someone's sitting here, don't move their stuff. And unlike in the US, where if you leave it there, somebody will steal your phone. In Japan, it's like, oh, it's indicated that you're there. I've actually, left my food at a table for it and got thrown away because they thought, oh, silly foreigner must not have known the rules. She needed to dump her tray when she was finished. We're not, maids and gonna clean it up for you. But really, I left my tray there because I just needed to go to the bathroom for a quick second, and I wanted to save my seat because the place was busy. Little did I know, I needed to leave, my bag or something there so they know I would come back for it. So just little things like that, realizing that the world can be safe. It's not impossible to live somewhere where crime is non-existent. And as an American, I always forget that we have the safest country. We have, the best everything, as they try to make it seem. But it was really an eye-opening experience to see that there's so much that we can work on as a country, that Japan does kind of have good going on for them. Number 7. This one's going to be a little controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. Not all racist comments and actions come from racist people. A lot of it is truly just pure ignorance. I have talked about this on my channel before, and this is not to excuse racism or to be proud of being a token, but rather to say that after having dated, met, befriended, and just talked to people here, a lot of people say, believe, and do things purely out of ignorance with no intention to legitimately be racist. So again, as I've said before, not intending to be racist doesn't save you from being racist per se, but rather, you get my point, it was not meant to be that way. Like, it's truly pure ignorance, a matter of not knowing. As an American, comments like, people assuming that I must be fast or I'm athletic, or telling me that they wish they were black because, they wanted to be an athlete, or they like basketball, or people suggesting having a baby with me so that they could have a beautiful mixed baby type thing, like weird stuff like that. Being complimented because of my skin complexion, people saying, backhanded stuff like, oh, I like light-skinned black girls, you're the prettiest light-skinned black girl I've ever seen, things like that. So again, this is not to excuse racism, but rather to say every racist comment isn't necessarily from somebody that's truly a racist in their heart and believe that they're superior to you, but rather they don't realize some of the things they've been taught and or believe about you or your culture or country or even language really comes from pure ignorance. They literally don't know better. I've literally had to explain to a guy why telling me that, I'm strong or I must be whatever is a racist remark. Basically, and as a black, if you're black and watching this, you already know what I'm getting at, whereas believe that black women are basically these superhumans or super women, basically, where we can take pain and we can, do this, that, and the other. And after I explained it to him, he apologized. He had no idea, he didn't mean it that way. He authentically was trying to compliment me, but it was not a compliment. It was insulting to me. So you deal with little things like that. And again, it's not to pass it. It needs to be corrected, but just kind of getting that other perspective. Sometimes it really is innocent. I also want to add, before moving on, that an easy way to distinguish the two, someone that really doesn't mean something in a racist way is open to correction. Someone that becomes defensive over it, like how I'm used to people doing in the US, where if a black person complains about something being insulting, instead of, let's just give an example, white people, instead of them being like, oh, I didn't know this was offensive, it's met with, oh, get over it, snowflake, you're, too sensitive, you're whatever. And it's like, this is my race, this is me, I'm black. I'm telling you how what you're saying and doing is making me feel. So for your response to be that I'm sensitive because I don't like your backhanded compliments, or, colorist remarks, or I believe something is, being done or designed to make fun of and mock black people, instead of you saying, oh, I didn't realize this was offensive, you get angry at me being offended. And I feel like for the most part, people here, when you call them out for saying or doing something that is offensive, as long as it's done nicely, with good intentions on your end too, they're apologetic. They feel stupid, they feel embarrassed, and I like that. I like people that want to learn, that want to correct themselves, want to better themselves. There's things that I didn't know, dealing with Asian Americans in the US. Japanese people don't really care, but some people that know English and that are educated are aware of Oriental being basically used as a slang or a racial slur or whatever. But I didn't understand how or why that was racist in the US. And I learned, over time. I learned as an adult. Oh, I never knew that. I never knew that that was, a bad thing to say. But I never referred to Asians as that anyway. But again, it was something that I didn't know. But I got educated on it. So, yeah, that's that. So, moving on. Number 8. Colors, fashion, and grooming for men is not gay. And what I mean by that is, if you are an American or European even, you know that in our culture, we associate guys that take care of themselves, that wear sparkly things, or that wear pink or shiny stuff, etc. Oh, this guy can't be straight. And I think that's really stupid. So how does wearing a certain color change your sexual preference or sexuality? Like, I really hate that whole little stupid mindset. That has nothing to do with anything. And, as a straight woman, you're a clown, or the person that you're with is made fun of for caring about his hair, or, trying to look nice. But it's really stupid because it's a double standard. Women like guys that take care of themselves. But taking care of yourself as a guy, if you're straight, it basically makes people mock and tease you. Like, are you supposed to be some dirty, grungy guy that just uses Axe body spray every day? Like, I don't understand that. So again, just kind of getting that different perspective that you most certainly can do that, and it doesn't make you feminine or non-masculine or whatever you want to call it. So it was different for me, and it was honestly kind of funny seeing guys like, wear purple shiny coats that are metallic clothing that would clearly be something that you would see in the women's department, but seeing a man that is straight, wearing something that is guys fashion, like it's not made to be worn by a woman, it's really just for men, and nothing is thought of it. It's just fashion, it's just a color, and I think it's great. If I were a guy, I would like sparkly stuff too. Like, who doesn't? So yeah, I like that aspect of Japan. That kind of gave me a different mindset, and different people have different opinions on this. I know my foreign friends don't like this, but for me, I do. I think it's cool that guys care about the way that they look, that they're okay with wearing any color. Why deny yourself, liking pink? Pink is a beautiful color. It's my favorite. Number 9. Children are actually a lot smarter than we give them credit for. Living in Japan, you see kids, doing really independent stuff, from buying things at the convenience store to, walking themselves to school, to taking trains, and, just knowing how to get around by themselves. They're oftentimes normally at least, accompanied by one other student or with a group, but they're not required to on their way home. So just seeing that is like super cool, seeing how responsible and, independent they are, whereas in America, we would never dream of allowing our 5 to 6-year-old walk anything further than a block or two. And even then, like, normally you might think as a parent that you need to go with them. But just seeing kids, ride bikes to cross streets, etc. Young kids, not older ones. And even, whether they live in a big or small city, suburban area, busy area, you would never see something like that downtown Chicago or New York, even although there's tons of people where you would think it's safer. But nope, it's just really crazy seeing how independent and mature children are here. Number 10. There's nothing wrong with living with your parents. In the US, it's such a race for you to become an adult, move out of your parents' house, and you're pretty much clowned and looked down upon in my culture for not having your stuff together, really by the time you're 18, and at the absolute latest 23, because by then, really more like 22, but we'll say 23, because by then you should have, graduated from college, you should have, enough credit and, your stuff together to at least rent your first apartment by yourself. preferably without roommates, but at least with roommates, not be home with mom and dad. Whereas in Japan, whether you're a male or female, it's encouraged for you and kind of expected for you to stay at home and live with your parents until you are ready to actually get married. You're not expected to have your own things or, to live in your own place. You're expected to, rely on your family, and your parents want you to stay at home. And it's not because, they're controlling or want to baby you, but they authentically love you and they care about you. And of course, when they get older, they do want you to take care of them. But we're talking about in the meantime. So you'll find that if you date older guys, like I do, they normally have their stuff together too, because they spent years, being at home while working full-time salaried jobs where they're not having to pay any bills, contribute to the electricity, pay part of the rent, nothing. They're living totally rent-free. Their mom is making their meals and everything for them. So they're able to put aside so much money, so much of a savings, and they are, ready and prepared to do things like get married and, have children and all these other different things, go on vacation, travel, and honeymoons, etc. Like, they're set for life. They're able to pay off, their student loans or anything else they might owe money for, if they even have any, take out that they had to take out, because more than likely their parents actually paid for college for them. So yeah, it's just a really different perspective, different way to see things, because again, in my culture, you are shamed for not having it together by 30. In Japan, you can be well into your 40s and living with mom and dad and nobody really cares. It's not so much of an embarrassing thing, so to speak. Number 11, retail workers deserve livable wages. This is not to make a politically correct video, but speaking as somebody that as a teenager I did work, even as a young adult when I was 18, 19 years old, when I was starting off, going to college, I did work retail jobs. I worked pretty much every retail job. I worked at Walmart, I worked at Starbucks, JCPenney, Old Navy, I think I said Walgreens already, Walgreens, CVS. I did it all. And I worked as a photographer. I did sales jobs. I worked at Navy Pier. I worked at the Willis Tower. And yeah, like, I always got paid really crappy, salaries. I think the most money I ever got was maybe $11 or $12 an hour or something like that. But it wasn't enough where I could rent my own place without roommates, pay my bills, and have to worry about anything. You're not going to be living the life here in Japan working at McDonald's, but you most certainly can, live on your own, have your own place. I remember, when my boyfriend was a student, he was working, at a coffee shop, and I was surprised. His job was allowing him to afford an apartment that was literally like twice the size of the one that I'm living in right now. His rent was reasonable. His pay was reasonable to cover all of his expenses and still have money to live off of. And he was able to travel the world while he was working in a coffee shop part-time as a college student. That's ridiculous and unheard of where I'm from. So yeah, and not that I didn't think people deserved livable wages, but it's pretty stupid. Everyone benefits from blue and pink collar workers. We need customer service. We need retail workers. Why do they not deserve to have stable salaries to live off of? And you might say, oh, go back to college and, earn a degree. But at the same time, it's like, okay, for everybody's not going to do that. And for those that don't do that, you do realize that by these people not having a higher education and not getting enough money, they're now going to be using your tax dollars to get government benefits. So either way it goes, it's like, wouldn't you rather have the money invested in giving them a better life than making it where they have to, basically wait on the government to give them a handout? Just pay them more for the work they're already doing for you, basically. So I like that. I feel Japan does that, basically. So of course they can use raises here too, but you get what I'm saying. I've never heard of anybody living in a major city and living alone with no roommates being able to pay for all of their stuff, not being homeless, not being poor, and they're not on the higher end salary wise, but they're not beggars on the street and desperately trying to figure out how they're going to get their bills paid. You can do it. I did it before. I've worked several retail jobs here in Japan myself. So yeah, it's really crazy just seeing how different this country treats blue and pink collar workers. Number 12, credit is stupid. If you haven't done your research, you would actually be surprised to know that the whole idea of credit scores is actually kind of stupid and is not something that the government created itself. The people that own these so-called, credit, I forgot what they call them, but the companies like I can't even think of it, that make up your like FICO score, whatever it's called. I haven't, thought about American terms in so long. Should have done my research before the video. But long story short, they're privately owned companies run by rich families that basically have full control over your credit score, if you will. It's a really stupid, unfair system, but I do understand why we do it. But seeing that Japan is able to run smoothly without it, it makes me question why the US doesn't join in and do the same thing. In Japan, as a foreigner, even as a Japanese person, like, you don't need a credit score in order to do things like, get an apartment or even to get a credit card. It does, of course, help if you have a history of having accounts and money and savings, etc. It does help and it does exist here, but it's not something that really stays with you or matters when doing day-to-day stuff. In the US, having a low credit score can be the difference between having a roof over your head and your name and not. It can be the difference between being able to get a phone or not. It can be the difference, between a lot of different stuff, getting a job. There's a lot to it. So yeah, it's really crazy seeing that this country doesn't run off of credit scores or really even credit cards, period. So thinking of a world without credit is something that I could never imagine as an American. Unfortunately, I didn't have parents that taught me about credit. I had to learn on my own and do my own research as a teenager. But after learning about it, I knew that it was important and that it was needed to survive. And seeing that in Japan, you don't need it to survive, it's very interesting to say the least. And last but not least, number 13. The government should provide more services to its people. Again, not trying to make it a political video, but hear me out. Japan pretty much offers, it's not free, but close enough to free health insurance. You get free transportation to and from your job. It's reimbursed 100%, not at the end of the year, not, when you file your taxes. No. At the end of the month, your employer literally pays for your transportation. If not, they do, quarterly, however often they want to give you a train pass. And the government reimburses your employer for the money that they're spending, on their employees' transportation. You can even, get your house paid for. A lot of Japanese salarymen are actually living, in rent-free houses, or their company pays anywhere from $100 to $300 of their rent, as long as it's, somewhere near where they're working. Little things like that. That's unheard of in the U.S. Your employer, imagine if your employer was going to pay for your transportation. Like that could be a lifesaver for a lot of people in the US that are working blue and pink collar jobs. And even if you're working, white collar job, but let's stay with blue and pink collar jobs. I remember when I used to work downtown Chicago, when I was living in the suburbs at Old Navy, and I was literally spending half of my salary for the month out of my paychecks, and I was an hourly worker with, irregular hours. I was spending at least half, if not more than half of it, just on transportation back and forth to get to and from work. That's not including a lunch. That's not including any other expenses that I had for that month. It was crazy. I was basically working for like $300 or $200 a month, but I had no choice. I didn't have a car, and even if I had a car, it wouldn't be worth it to drive that far and then pay an additional $30 or $40 a day for parking. And then just to find parking downtown for an entire day is a challenge within itself. So it's really crazy just thinking that this country could do that, and they're not in debt, and the yen is not falling, like how Americans tend to think that if the government does anything for you, if they give you free healthcare, oh, this money has to come from somewhere, the country's gonna collapse, blah blah blah. There's all this stuff that we talk about, but living in Japan, they're doing it and they're surviving. Everything's just fine. They're not going through any of those issues that we've made up in our mind. And there's 300+ million of us in America, whereas Japan has half of that population, and they're handling it a-okay. So yeah, it really was an eye-opening experience, so to speak. But they also basically pay you child support for having children. I think you get that quarterly and not on a monthly basis, but still they give you money per month basically for each child that you do have. So like, just think about that, the fact that you're able to get a little bit of extra income each month without having to have baby daddy drama just for being a parent. That's super helpful for parents here. They also are required to match your pension, your employer. So whatever you're putting in for your pension, your employer has to match it as well. So for example, if you're paying $200 a month, your employer is putting in $200, thus you get $400. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 90% sure that's how it works. At least all of my jobs have worked that way. And it's not by choice, it is by force. It's the law here. Your employer, if you're working a full-time job, they're required to do that. If you are, I think, 20 years old or older, or it might even be 18, you're required to, have a pension here in Japan. you're required to have a pension. Here in Japan, it's not optional, which this can sound bad to some people, but think of it like Social Security, except it's actually being matched by your employer. And again, this is in combination with all of the other cheap, free, and low price things that you get. Living in the U.S., I have never had a normal health insurance, card or company, whatever. I've had discount plans before that I had under my mom, but I never had a regular one, and never as an adult. So just having the opportunity to go and get medical care when and if needed is great. Again, I've talked about this before. I don't prefer Japanese medical care over American, but just knowing that if there is an emergency or if I am in need, I can and will be seen, and that is a much easier, quicker process than what I'm used to in the US. And again, it's practically free. Do you pay for it? Yes, but it's not as expensive as it is in the US. And if you're not working, it's even cheaper for people that are students. When I was a college student, my health insurance was I think like $9 or $13, something super cheap. Now I have a better insurance plan, so I'm paying about $130-ish, I think, dollars a month. So even then, like, that's doable for me. So yeah, that's it. Those are my 13 things that have kind of changed my perspective, like just seeing that this country runs so differently than the US. There's negatives to everything. I'm not talking about the negatives. I'm talking about just the fact that these things have opened my eyes, gave me a different perspective, not necessarily good or necessarily entirely bad, but just giving my own opinion, own perspective, things that I didn't think about, didn't know. So yeah, that is that. Thank you so much for watching. If you have something else that you would like to add to this list that you found, mind-changing and interesting, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below. Also, feel free to disagree with me. If you have something that you don't agree with in this video, feel free to tell me that too. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please like this video. I would also appreciate it if you would follow me. I have an Instagram and a Twitter account. You can like my Facebook page and add me on Snapchat as well. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.